It began with a promise of peace, love, and paradise. Aaliyah Morgan had always dreamed of taking a trip that felt like something out of a movie. White sand, crystal clear water, fruity drinks with umbrellas in them, and the man she loved beside her. When her husband, Deshaun Taylor, surprised her with a trip to Ocho Rios, Jamaica, for their third wedding anniversary, it felt like the heavens had finally answered. What she didn't expect was that this dream would end in blood. Aaliyah, 27, was a vibrant and ambitious woman. Raised in Kingston, she had grown up in a modest neighborhood, the eldest of 3 daughters. Her mother was a schoolteacher and her father a mechanic. She had always been headstrong, determined to make something of herself, and her path eventually crossed with Deshaun's at a business networking event in Montego Bay. Deshaun Taylor, now 31, was the owner of a growing logistics company. His charm and quiet confidence had made him an attractive prospect, not just in business, but in love. The two clicked almost instantly. Within a year, they were married. To the outside world, the Taylors were the picture of success and stability. Young, beautiful, well-traveled, with a home in the hills and no apparent troubles. But behind closed doors, their marriage had already started showing cracks. Arguments about Deshaun's long hours, his emotionally distant behavior, and Aaliyah's suspicion that she was not truly a priority all began to erode the fantasy. So when Deshaun suggested they take a week-long vacation to Ocho Rios and include his parents, it was a chance to reset, to heal, and to remember what they were fighting for. The trip was also special for another reason. Aaliyah had been trying to get pregnant for months without success. Perhaps, she thought, a relaxed mind and a change of scenery would finally bring them the miracle they'd been waiting for. They arrived at the coastal resort late in the afternoon, Deshaun, Aaliyah, and his parents, Victor and Claudine Taylor. The villa was perched on a private cliffside, with breathtaking views of the Caribbean Sea. Everything seemed perfect. Victor Taylor was 54 and physically imposing, with salt and pepper hair and a deep voice that seemed to command every room he entered. He was a retired real estate mogul, once known as the King of Concrete in Jamaica's luxury housing scene. His wife, Claudine, was more reserved, soft-spoken and ever-present with a smile, but noticeably tired. Years of living in Victor's shadow had worn her spirit thin. From the moment they arrived, Aaliyah felt it. The way Victor looked at her, lingering glances, over-friendly compliments. At first, she brushed them off as harmless, maybe even flattering. He'd always been warm toward her, even doting. But this time, there was something else in his eyes, something dangerous. Still, she said nothing. She wanted the trip to be perfect. The first 2 days went smoothly. Mornings were spent on the beach, afternoons touring waterfalls and caves, and evenings filled with reggae music, jerk chicken, and laughter. Deshaun seemed more relaxed than he had in months. He held Aaliyah's hand again. They kissed in public. For a brief moment they felt like newlyweds. But while the sun was shining on the surface, shadows were gathering underneath. Victor had taken an unusual interest in Aaliyah's activities. He volunteered to accompany her when Deshaun was tired. He'd sit close during meals, make her laugh with crude jokes, and brush her shoulder with a little too much familiarity. And Aaliyah, flattered, slightly unnerved, but unsure, didn't know how to respond. One afternoon, Deshaun went into town with Claudine to handle a business errand. Aaliyah stayed behind at the villa. Victor offered her a drink. They sat by the infinity pool, overlooking the sea. The air was thick with humidity and tension. "You know," Victor said, swirling his glass, "you're too good for my son sometimes. He's lucky to have you." Aaliyah smiled awkwardly. "Thank you, Mr. Taylor." "Victor," he corrected her. "Call me Victor. Your family." She laughed nervously. "Okay, Victor." That was the first time she truly felt it. The chill beneath the Caribbean heat. The sense that this trip wasn't just about reconnecting with her husband. It was something else. Something twisted. Aaliyah couldn't have known then, couldn't have dreamed, that within just 2 weeks, one man would lie dead, another would be in handcuffs, and she would be carrying a child that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The dream had just begun. The nightmare was waiting. It was supposed to be a family trip. But even from the beginning, Victor Taylor made sure everyone knew who truly ran the show. He wasn't just Deshawn's father. He was his blueprint and his competition. Victor had built his empire from nothing, pouring concrete by hand in his 20s before eventually owning a string of luxury properties from Negril to Portmore. He was respected, feared, and, according to many who knew him, addicted to control. Even at the villa, his presence filled every room. He had opinions on everything: what time they should eat, which beach had the cleanest water, even what Aaliyah should wear to dinner. "You don't need to hide your body under all that," he told her one evening, nodding at her floral sundress. "You're young. Wear something that shows your shape. You've got it. Flaunt it." Claudine, his wife of 32 years, gave a weak smile as she sipped her wine. Deshawn didn't seem to hear. He was busy on a call. Another logistics issue back home. Aaliyah chuckled nervously, brushing off the comment, but it lingered in her mind longer than she wanted to admit. She didn't find it flattering. It felt predatory. Yet part of her felt something else too: power. Victor made her feel seen in a way Deshawn hadn't in months, maybe years. Where her husband had become routine, working late, glued to emails, Victor was direct, complimentary, and charismatic. He made her feel like she mattered, confused her, it disturbed her, and it pulled her in. Aaliyah's relationship with Deshawn had never been perfect. From the outside, they were couple goals. But behind the closed doors of their home in Kingston, silence had replaced passion. Deshawn loved her, yes, but he had become absorbed by his company's growth. His ambition was relentless. Often he came home after midnight, sometimes not at all. They barely had sex anymore. Aaliyah had once tried to talk to him about it, about how alone she felt, about her desire to start a family, to feel like they were truly living life together. But Deshawn had only nodded, distracted, offering hollow promises that things would get better. Victor, on the other hand, listened. He paid attention. On that second evening at the villa, while the others napped, he joined her on the patio with a bottle of coconut rum and asked how she was really doing. "Are you happy, Aaliyah?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know," she admitted after a long pause. "Sometimes I feel like I'm more of a roommate than a wife." Victor nodded slowly. "That boy doesn't understand what he has. I taught him how to build businesses, but I never taught him how to hold onto a woman like you." His words were slick, deliberate. He wasn't just probing. He was planting seeds. And Aaliyah, tired of being invisible, let them take root. On the fourth night, the temperature hadn't dropped even after sunset. Aaliyah couldn't sleep, so she slipped out of bed quietly and stepped out to the pool. The moon reflected on the water like silver glass. She dipped her feet in and exhaled. Behind her, a figure approached. "You couldn't sleep either?" Victor's voice rumbled behind her. He was shirtless, wearing loose cotton pants. He moved with the confidence of a man who knew he didn't need permission to be anywhere. She should have gone back to her room. She should have asked him to leave. But she didn't. They talked for almost an hour about life, love, disappointment. Victor opened up, claiming Claudine had become cold over the years, uninterested in intimacy or excitement. Then came the moment. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from Aaliyah's cheek and said, "You remind me of the women I used to chase, but you're smarter, and so damn beautiful." Aaliyah froze. "You shouldn't say that," she whispered. "But it's true," he said, "and I think you know it." His lips grazed her cheek, slow and purposeful. She didn't stop him. Not that night. From that moment on, the energy between them shifted. Their conversations became more charged. Their touches lingered longer. They would find excuses to be alone. Victor inviting her to accompany him to the local markets, Aaliyah volunteering to help him cook. It became a silent game of temptation, one they both knew could destroy everything. Deshawn was growing more distant again, back on his laptop, taking calls during dinners. He seemed relieved that Aaliyah had someone to keep her company while he handled things. And Claudine knew. She said nothing, but her eyes followed Aaliyah and Victor every time they entered or left a room. Her smiles became thinner. Her appetite faded. She wasn't stupid. She was just scared. And maybe she knew better than anyone else what Victor was capable of when he wanted something, and wasn't getting it. The shadows were thickening. The line had been crossed. What neither Aaliyah nor Victor could imagine was how quickly it would all spiral out of control. Their secret wouldn't stay buried for long. And when the truth came out, someone would die for it. The sun burned golden above the turquoise waters of Ocho Rios, casting long shadows across the private stretch of beach that came with the villa. It was the 5th day of the Taylors' vacation, and by now everything had changed, at least between Aaliyah and Victor. What began as subtle flirtation had grown into something more physical, something more dangerous. The first time it happened, it was in the outdoor shower near the guest house. Deshawn had taken a last-minute trip into town to meet a supplier for his company. Claudine was resting upstairs with a migraine. Aaliyah had just returned from a swim, water dripping down her curves. Victor had been watching her from the balcony. One word, "Wait," was all he said, and she did. What followed was quick, breathless, and reckless. Aaliyah barely remembered the details afterward, just the feeling. Adrenaline, guilt, and a sick sense of satisfaction. She told herself it was a one-time mistake. She told herself it couldn't happen again. But it did. Each stolen moment only pulled them deeper. They were like addicts, grasping at lust in the cracks of paradise. Quick kisses in the hallway, whispered conversations in the kitchen while the others were distracted. Secret touches under the table at dinner. Aaliyah knew it was wrong, knew it was dangerous, but Victor had a way of making her feel alive, even if just for a moment. And that feeling was something she hadn't tasted in years. But what she didn't know was that someone was watching. Claudine Taylor had seen enough to confirm her growing suspicion. The change in her husband was unmistakable. He was suddenly energized, smug, even proud. The same Victor who had ignored her for years was now dressing better, whistling in the morning, and constantly finding excuses to be alone with Aaliyah. And Aaliyah, once sweet and respectful, had become jumpy and distant. Claudine said nothing out loud. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. After years with Victor, she had learned to stay quiet until it mattered. And when it did, she'd be ready. On the 6th evening, Victor and Aaliyah snuck away after dinner under the pretense of going for a walk. The moonlight danced across the beach as they strolled barefoot along the surf. Victor stopped and pulled her close, his hands firm around her waist. "I don't want to stop," he said. "I don't either," Aaliyah whispered before adding. "But we have to." He looked at her, confused. "Why? This is insane. You're my husband's father." Victor scoffed. "And your husband is blind to what you need. I'm not." There was silence for a moment, and then she said something she had never planned to say. "I think I'm late. My period." Victor froze. "You think you're pregnant?" he asked, his voice low, almost shocked. "I don't know. It's only a few days. But I feel different." Victor turned to look at the ocean, then back at her. "Then we need to be smart." "Smart?" she snapped. "You think this is something we can fix with smart? I'm carrying your son's baby, or maybe yours." He grabbed her face gently but firmly. "Then we'll deal with it. Together. You don't tell Deshawn anything. Not yet." That night, Aaliyah couldn't sleep. The pressure was crushing her chest. Her phone sat glowing on the nightstand. She opened a notepad app and began typing out a message to herself. A journal entry. "I have made the worst mistake of my life. I crossed a line with Victor. I think I'm pregnant, and I'm terrified. I don't love him, I just felt invisible and he saw me. That's all it took. I don't know what to do. If Deshawn ever finds out, he'll kill us both." She saved it, closed her phone, cried herself to sleep beside the man she once loved more than anyone. The next morning, Deshawn's phone had died. He borrowed Aaliyah's to call his office while she was in the shower. A message notification popped up, a reminder set by Aaliyah herself for a clinic appointment titled Prenatal Ultrasound. Deshawn blinked, froze, clicked the notification. The app opened to her notepad. His eyes scanned the entry, line by line. As he read the words, his entire world collapsed. His hands began to tremble. Later that morning, Deshaun was sitting silently on the patio when Aaliyah came out, wrapped in a towel. He didn't look at her. "Is it true?" he asked calmly. She stopped mid-step. "What?" He turned to her. His eyes were dark and hollow. "Is true?" Her throat dried. She knew immediately. He had read the message. The villa that once felt like paradise now felt like a prison cell. And the door had just slammed shut. The morning air was heavy, oppressive, like the thick silence that hung between Aaliyah and Deshaun. For the first time since arriving in Ocho Rios, no one went to the beach. No one smiled over breakfast. No reggae music played from the Bluetooth speaker. The villa was still, but the emotional tension roared beneath the surface. Deshaun had barely spoken a word to Aaliyah since he read the message on her phone. His gaze was cold, unreadable. He hadn't confronted her fully. He didn't need to. The words in her note were loud enough. He now knew that she had slept with someone. What he didn't know yet was who. And Aaliyah was desperately trying to keep it that way. Inside the bathroom, Aaliyah stared at herself in the mirror, trying to recognize the woman who stared back. Her hands trembled as she splashed water on her face. She hadn't meant for it to go this far. What started as an emotional escape had turned into a physical betrayal, and now, possibly a pregnancy. She debated confessing the full truth, praying Deshaun would forgive her if she left Victor's name out. But her instincts screamed that Victor wouldn't stay quiet forever. And worst of all, she wasn't even sure she wanted him to. Victor, meanwhile, was calm. Too calm. As if everything was unfolding exactly as he wanted. That afternoon, he approached Aaliyah while she was alone in the garden. He was casual, smiling. "He knows, doesn't he?" Victor asked. She didn't answer. Her silence was confirmation. Victor stepped closer. "If he says anything, deny it. Say you were drunk and you imagine things. Say it was a misunderstanding. Whatever it takes." "You think he'll believe that?" she whispered harshly. "I don't care if he does. What I care about is that you don't throw me under the bus. You don't owe him anything anymore." Aaliyah backed away, repulsed. "You're his father. You raised him." Victor's smile faded. "And he took everything I built and made it his own. You don't know what it's like to watch your own son become what you once were, and forget who helped him get there. Maybe I wanted something he couldn't take from me." His words sent a chill through her. This wasn't just lust. It was vengeance. A warped act of possession and power. That night, the family sat down to dinner. Claudine made brown stewed chicken and fried plantains, her hands trembling slightly as she set the table. She didn't speak much. Deshaun stared at his plate. Victor poured wine as if nothing was wrong. Aaliyah could barely eat. The silence was unbearable. Halfway through the meal, Deshaun finally spoke. His voice was level but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Anything you want to tell me, Aaliyah?" Victor looked up, curious. Aaliyah's throat tightened. "About what?" Deshaun leaned forward. "Like why you had a prenatal ultrasound scheduled behind my back." Claudine dropped her fork. Victor went still. Aaliyah's lips parted. I didn't know how to tell you. I only found out 2 days ago." "Is it mine?" Deshaun asked, locking eyes with her. She hesitated too long. That hesitation answered everything. Victor cleared his throat and tried to change the subject. "Maybe now's not the time to." "Shut the hell up," Deshaun snapped. Everyone froze. He turned to Victor slowly. "I don't know why, but something tells me you've got your dirty hands in this." Victor smirked. "Be careful what you accuse your own father of, son." "Why?" Deshaun said, standing. "Because you'd actually be ashamed for once? Or because Mom might find out what you really are?" Claudine looked up sharply, her face pale. "What's going on?" she asked quietly. "Why don't you ask him?" Deshaun said, pointing at Victor. "Ask your husband if he's been sleeping with my wife." Aaliyah gasped. "Deshaun." Victor stood too, his tone changing. "I warned you not to come at me like this." Claudine clutched her chest. "Victor, tell me that's not true." Victor didn't answer. His silence said everything. Tears filled Claudine's eyes. She got up, backed away, and walked out of the room like a ghost. Later that night, Deshawn sat on the porch alone, drinking straight from the bottle. Aaliyah approached him slowly, trying to apologize, trying to explain. He didn't even look at her. "Don't," he said. "Don't speak. I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. He laughed bitterly. "But you did. And you let him destroy everything we built." "I was lonely," she snapped. "You weren't there. You haven't been there for months," he yelled. Silence fell again. He stood up, towering over her. "I don't ever want to see your face again. After we leave this place, we're done." Aaliyah didn't reply. She just walked away, her hands trembling, her heart shattering. And behind a curtain upstairs, Victor watched them both, expressionless, calculating. He knew this wasn't over, but he had no idea how fatally it would end. Aaliyah couldn't wait any longer. She bought a pregnancy test at a small pharmacy in town. Back at the villa, her hands shook as she waited. 2 pink lines. Positive. She sat on the bathroom floor in silence, numb. It was real. She was pregnant. And the father was most likely Victor. She wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Deshawn couldn't sleep. He drank late into the night, rereading Aaliyah's note on her phone. He paced. Thought of the man who raised him, the woman he married. The betrayal was deeper than he could process. He cornered Aaliyah the next morning. "Is the baby his?" he asked. Aaliyah cried but said nothing. That silence told him everything. Something inside him broke. Victor didn't hide anymore. He admitted it to Deshawn face to face. "Yes," he said calmly. "She came to me. I didn't force her. She chose me." Deshawn lunged at him. They fought. Punches. Blood. Screams. Claudine tried to break it up but was shoved aside. Aaliyah screamed, "Stop!" But they didn't. The family was crumbling, and Victor didn't even flinch. He smirked like he'd won. That night, Deshawn sat alone in the kitchen. A kitchen knife lay on the counter. He stared at it, then gripped it. Aaliyah was asleep. Victor was in the guest room. Deshawn walked in slowly. Victor sat up, confused. "What the hell are you?" The knife sank deep into Victor's chest. Once, twice. Blood soaked the sheets. Victor gasped, then stilled. Aaliyah burst in, screaming. But it was too late. Victor was dead. The police came at dawn. Claudine called them in a panic. Deshawn sat quietly in the living room, covered in blood, holding the knife. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He was arrested, eyes hollow. Aaliyah sobbed as the officers led him away. Victor's body was taken in a bag. The dream trip was now a crime scene. Months later, Aaliyah gave birth. A boy. She didn't know what to name him. Deshawn was sentenced to 25 years in prison for second-degree murder. The judge called it a tragic end to generational failure. Claudine never spoke to Aaliyah again. Aaliyah moved to Montego Bay with her child. Alone. Forgotten. People still whisper about what happened that week in Ocho Rios. A trip meant to celebrate love became a deadly lesson in betrayal.